Have you ever done everything right, chosen your plants carefully, watered consistently, added what felt like the best possible soil, and still ended up with a garden that just stayed small? Stunted tomatoes, peppers that barely produce, shrubs that never seem to thrive no matter what you feed them. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone, and the reason your garden is staying small probably has nothing to do with your effort. It has everything to do with one very common mistake that most gardeners never even realize they are making. Today, we are going to bust the soil myth that is quietly keeping your garden from reaching its full potential, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to fix it. So here is the myth. When most people plant something, a tomato transplant, a fruit tree, a perennial, they dig a hole, and then they fill that hole with something much better than what was already in the ground. A bag of rich compost, a premium potting mix, or fluffy amended topsoil. It feels generous. It feels like the right thing to do. You are giving your plant the best possible start, right? That logic makes complete sense on the surface, and it is exactly why this mistake is so widespread. But here is what is actually happening underground. When you fill that planting hole with a material that is dramatically different from your surrounding native soil, lighter, fluffier, with different texture and water-holding properties, you create what soil scientists call a textural discontinuity. University extension programs, including Oregon State University Extension, the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources, and Washington State University Extension, have all documented this problem in their planting guides. What happens is that water does not move smoothly between soil layers with very different textures. Instead, moisture accumulates inside that amended hole and essentially pools there, because it resists moving into the denser native soil around it. The hole acts like a bathtub. Water fills it up, saturates the root zone, and drains poorly, even if your native soil drains just fine on its own. Now couple that with what the roots do. Roots follow the path of least resistance. When your plant is sitting in that soft, rich, beautifully amended pocket, the roots grow outward and then they hit a wall. Not a physical wall, but a biological and physical barrier. The native soil around that hole is denser, harder, and structurally very different. So roots often stop there, or worse, they turn and start growing in circles inside that fluffy amended zone, just like a plant that has been sitting too long in a container. You have essentially built your plant a pot underground just without the visible walls, and we all know what happens to pot-bound plants. They stall, they produce less, they struggle even when the surface looks fine. This is why your tomatoes might fruit early but stay small. This is why your fruit trees might leaf out beautifully and then plateau. This is why perennials and shrubs planted 5 years ago still look the same size they did the day you put them in the ground. The roots never fully expanded into the broader soil ecosystem where the real resources, the water, the minerals, the microbial activity, actually live. You gave them a comfortable little room and they never left it. Now, this core myth is not the only one feeding the problem. There are a few closely related beliefs that compound the damage, and they are worth addressing quickly so you have the full picture. The first is the idea that adding coarse sand to clay soil will loosen it up and improve drainage. This one has been circulating for generations, and it is genuinely harmful. When you mix sand into clay in the proportions most home gardeners use, you do not get loose, fluffy soil. You get something closer to concrete. The clay particles fill the spaces between sand particles and the whole mixture becomes dense and nearly impermeable. University research on soil texture amendment consistently shows that to actually change clay soil with sand, you would need to add so much sand, somewhere around 50 to 70% by volume, that it becomes economically and practically absurd. The takeaway is simple: do not add sand to clay. It does not work the way you think it does. The second supporting myth is that more compost always means better soil. Compost is wonderful. It is genuinely one of the best things you can do for your garden long term. But piling on massive quantities of raw or heavily concentrated compost, especially in a single planting hole, can actually create nutrient imbalances. High compost concentrations can elevate nitrogen and phosphorus to levels that interfere with how plants uptake other essential minerals. In some cases, excessive organic matter accumulation can lead to salt buildup in the root zone, which stresses plants rather than feeding them. Compost works best when it is incorporated broadly and gradually over time, not dumped in concentrated quantities into individual planting holes. The third myth is that regular deep tilling improves your soil structure season after season. It feels productive. You turn the soil, it looks broken up and aerated, and you feel like you are doing something good for your garden. But repeated deep tilling actually destroys the fungal networks, the mycorrhizal structures that connect plant roots to nutrients and water across a much wider area than roots can reach alone. It collapses the natural pore structure that healthy soil builds over time. It brings weed seeds to the surface. And it leaves your soil more compacted and vulnerable after each season, not less. Modern soil science strongly supports low-till and no-till approaches for building long-term soil health. So what does the science-backed approach actually look like? Here is what to do instead, and these steps are practical enough to start applying right now. First, when you plant something new, dig a wide, shallow hole rather than a deep, narrow one. The goal is a hole roughly 2 to 3 times the width of your root ball, but only as deep as the root ball itself, sometimes slightly shallower because roots spread outward, not downward. This encourages lateral root spread into native soil from the very beginning rather than directing roots downward into a deep amended pocket. Second, do not amend the backfill. Use the native soil you dug out to fill the hole back in around your plant. This eliminates the textural discontinuity entirely. Your plant's roots will start encountering the real soil immediately and begin adapting to it. Yes, this feels counterintuitive, but it is what the research supports and what long-term garden performance confirms. Third, get a soil test before you do anything else to your soil. This is probably the single most underused tool in home gardening. A basic soil test, available through your local cooperative extension office for very little money, tells you your actual pH, your nutrient levels, and often your texture and organic matter content. With that information, you can make targeted, intelligent amendments to your broader garden area rather than guessing. You might discover your soil needs lime or sulfur or a specific mineral supplement, or you might discover it is actually in better shape than you thought. Fourth, focus your energy on surface mulching rather than digging. Spread 2 to 4 inches of organic mulch, wood chips, straw, shredded leaves across the surface of your entire planting area. Over time, as that mulch breaks down, it feeds soil biology, builds organic matter from the top down exactly the way forests build soil naturally, and gradually improves your native soil structure across a wide area. This is how you build a genuinely better growing environment without disrupting the soil ecosystem you already have. Fifth, if you have existing plants that are stunted and you suspect root circling or the bathtub effect is at play, the fix is not to dig them up and replant them. For smaller plants, you can gently loosen the outer edges of the soil around the root zone and use a garden fork to create pathways from the existing root zone into the surrounding native soil. For larger established plants, heavy surface mulching and patience is usually the best approach. Focus on building the surrounding soil over the next 1 to 2 seasons and give roots time to follow. Here is the bigger picture worth sitting with for a moment. Healthy, productive gardens are not built in a single planting season. They are built by working with native soil rather than replacing it, by feeding soil biology rather than fighting it, and by letting plants root deeply and widely into a living system rather than a manufactured pocket of amended material. The gardens that produce abundantly year after year, the ones that seem almost effortless, are almost always the ones where the soil has been built gradually from the surface down over multiple seasons. That is available to you regardless of where you are starting from. So if your garden has been staying small, if your yields have been disappointing despite your best efforts, try this. Next time you plant, use a wide, shallow hole and fill it with your native soil. Mulch the surface heavily. Get a soil test. Stop adding sand to clay, stop over-concentrating compost in individual holes, and let your soil biology do the work it is designed to do. The difference in what your garden produces in plant size, in root depth, in harvest, can be genuinely dramatic once you stop fighting your soil and start building it. If this helped you understand something your garden has been trying to tell you, go ahead and like this video. It helps more gardeners find this channel and find the information they need. Subscribe to Cultiva for more myth-busting, science-backed gardening content every week. And if you have already tried fixing a stunted garden or you are going to try this approach this season, leave a comment below and share your story. Every garden is different, every soil is different, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Thank you for being here, and go build something incredible.